Hi, and welcome to another episode of Joy Recovery Radio. Glad that you joined us today. Today, we're going to look at some research that's been done that compares 5 different types of intervention when it comes to sex addiction recovery and which one was the most effective. And then we want to unpack that particular intervention. So I think it's going to be very thought-provoking, very interesting as you look at between these 5 modalities, which one is most likely to stop an addict from acting out. So let me describe the study that was done, and I'm going to put a link in the show notes so you can look at the actual research that was done. I can't say that I completely agree with the ethics totally in how the study was done, but the results were quite compelling. So here's how the study was done. You had a sample size of over 1,000 people that signed up for the study, and it was reduced down to 711. Here's how they conducted the study with these 711 participants. They activated the desire to act out by exposing the person to pornography video for 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes of watching whatever type of porn video the participants self-selected, so this wasn't content that was selected for them, they self-selected this content so that it would activate the desire to keep looking. After 5 minutes of viewing the pornographic material, they stopped the pornographic video, and there were 5 different interventions that were implemented to see if it would have an impact on the user. And so here's just a brief description of the 5 interventions. The first one was willpower. And this is the ability to avoid temptations in favor of some other potential benefit. So it's harnessing and using our own willpower, our own self-control to stop the behavior. Second was mindfulness. And this is simply the heightened awareness of the present moment and being your authentic self in the present moment. The third intervention is what is called awe, to evoke awe in the participant. This is an experience in the presence of something that is so vast and so magnificent that it increases the feelings of connectedness to the world around you. The fourth intervention was life meaning, life purpose, and values. This is an intervention where my life makes sense to me. My life has a meaning and it matters. There's a purpose, and my life is being directed towards a certain goal or a certain value. And then finally, the control group was the 5th intervention, which is the common intervention of distraction. And this is where I employ some kind of strategy to distract me from this mental preoccupation or this impulse that I'm feeling right now. So 5 minutes of porn exposure, and then 5 brief interventions. Each intervention was 10 minutes in length. And they were measuring 2 things, desire and self-agency or self-efficacy. And so the first measurement is desire. Desire among self-reported sex addicts is higher than the normal population. And self-agency or self-efficacy among self-reported sex addicts is lower. So the desire is just a measurement of how bad do I want to continue to view the material that I started the first 5 minutes? Whereas self-efficacy or self-agency is how strongly do I believe in my own ability, my own competence and confidence to stop, to achieve whatever goal I have. So these are the 2 things that were measured after the intervention to see which of the 5 interventions had the greatest impact on lowering desire to view the material and the greatest impact on increasing self-agency, the confidence and competence that I can stop. And so this is a significant finding. Let me go into a little bit more detail on how they actually did the interventions. So first, the willpower. When they implemented the willpower intervention, the way they conducted that was there was a brief reading that the participant would do about rising above challenges and the temptations and the struggles of life, an explanation that practicing willpower is like a muscle that you can flex and utilize. And it was followed by a 4-minute inspirational video about harnessing our own willpower. And then the last thing was they were to write about 2 situations in which in the past they successfully applied willpower to overcome some kind of challenge. So that was the 10-minute intervention around willpower. The 10-minute intervention around mindfulness was a brief reading about what mindfulness is, the positive effects that a person experiences from it, such as rising above challenges and temptations, and then a brief guided meditation where they actually participated in mindfulness meditation. The third intervention that was utilized was awe. And this included a brief reading about the experience that astronauts have when they see the Earth from space and the sense of awe that they have. And this was followed by a 5-minute video of you departing from the Earth in a rocket, and then the camera focuses on seeing our planet from space and the awe that you experience as you take in the video. The fourth intervention was life meaning. They conducted this one by a brief reading about authenticity and the importance of living according to one's values and finding a sense of meaning and purpose in life and pursuing that purpose. This was followed by a 4-minute video of Steve Jobs from Apple, who was interviewed shortly before his own death, talking about death and talking about the importance of authentic values and having a purpose for your life. And then there was an exercise where they had to think about 3 values that represent who they truly are, and then write about how are you going to live according to those values for the next month. The final intervention was distraction, and this was the control group used to measure the other 4 interventions. And the distraction was simply this. The participants watched a 10-minute video about an unknown historical Roman king from ancient history. So that would be pretty distracting. And so I'm curious, before I let you know which of the 5 interventions had the most effectiveness when it comes to decreasing desire and raising agency, which one do you think it was? Do you think it was willpower? Do you think it was mindfulness and meditation? Do you think it was a sense of awe? Do you think it was life meaning and purpose and values? Or do you think it was distraction? Because there was only one that had a measurably significant result in both measurements. There was only one intervention that decreased desire and raised agency. Which one do you think it was? Well, the one that actually made a difference in both measurements, both domains, was life meaning, purpose, and values. So let's talk about that for a moment. That might be surprising for some of you, that it wasn't one of the other 4 interventions. And that's not to say that the other 4 aren't effective, but when it comes to these particular mechanisms that they were measuring, desire and agency, this was the only one that had a significant impact on both, was an intervention built around life meaning, values, and purpose. So there are some possible explanations for this. Let's look at that. It could be argued that the life meaning and values and purpose intervention was successful because it created a future orientation by leading the participant to get out of the current temptation that they were mired in and to think about long-term goals and long-term vision and what is your purpose and what are your values. Whereas looking at porn is seen as a very selfish, short-term goal or experience. So it took the participant out of the present moment and had them drawn into a future orientation. The thought is this: when there are 2 competing behavioral options that are activated at the same time, the one with the higher relative value to the person is the one that is most likely to be chosen. When a person is activated by giving into temptation for a moment, or in this particular study, 5 minutes of viewing pornography content of their choice, according to recovery ideology, it's almost impossible for that person to stop. They are now, quote unquote, powerless, that they are lost in the addiction. And apart from some kind of supernatural intervention, they're not going to stop. So what's very interesting about this is after the 5 minutes and the video is stopped, there are these 2 competing behavioral options. Do you want to continue to look at the acting out material and the short-term benefit that you may think you receive from that? Or let's remind you of your values, your top 3, and what you want your life to look like a month from now, a year from now, and what is your true north, or what is the purpose of your life. And let's reflect on that. And now, what does this do to the level of desire and the level of agency that you feel right now? And that was the intervention that made the biggest difference. What this is touching on is actually a type of recovery that was developed by the psychologist Paul Wong that's called meaning-centered recovery for addiction. So Dr. Wong was the one that coined this type of recovery. And it is the idea that addiction is a response to living a life that has little or no personal meaning to the addict. It's the idea that the fundamental motivation in all humans is the need to make sense of my life and to pursue some type of existence that has meaning to me personally. So this is the concept that the addictive behavior is more than just escaping negative emotions or unpleasant situations. It's not just numbing out. It's not coming from a place of a lack of coping skills with life. And it's bigger and broader than just your genetics or the dynamics of your family of origin. And it's not just some kind of brain disease or some neural pathway issue that's going on in your brain. That this basically is an existential vacuum that is underneath the addiction. And we can't understand the addiction and we can't address the addiction without tapping into that existential vacuum. Now, what does Wong mean when he says existential vacuum? What he's describing is this emptiness that develops when a person's attempt to live a life that is full of meaning and purpose is constantly frustrated or disappointed. When you look at the life of the addict from the outside and you just observe this person, they look like they have everything needed for a happy existence. Many of them look successful. They have a nice family. They have a nice social circle. They have good, well-paying jobs. They have a collection of material possessions. Looking at them objectively from the outside, it looks like they have everything needed for fulfillment in life and having a life of meaning. But when you look at the addict and their life from the inside, when you look at what they personally self-report, what they're experiencing, what their existence looks like, existentially, what is their reality? This is what they report. We don't see it, but they experience it. Their existence, their very existence is filled with anger and depression, boredom, monotony, loneliness, shame, despair, hopelessness, this feeling that my life doesn't really matter. There's no purpose. And these are the symptoms of an existence that seems to have no real meaning, or at least it doesn't have any meaning to me personally as I live it. Addicts describe this nagging feeling of emptiness, hollowness in their lives, a lack of purpose. They're like lost souls that are wandering around aimlessly with no direction. Another common example of this existential vacuum that Wong talks about is many addicts have this feeling of not fitting in anywhere in the world, that I am separate from humanity, I am disconnected from myself, from others, and from my creator. So central to meaning-centered recovery is the notion that any addict, or really, if you get down to it, any human, is struggling to achieve some kind of sense of meaning and identity, purpose and community in their life. That humans are, by very nature, we are growth-oriented. And this was made popular by Abraham Maslow and his theory of motivation for human behavior. He says that we humans desire to achieve what he calls self-actualization. And that is realizing our potential, our full potential, seeking personal growth and having a sense of purpose and meaning for our life. Research indicates that if an addict can overcome the barriers to this growth process and begin to find a sense of meaning and purpose and a path towards self-actualization and reaching their potential, then there is a transformation that occurs in their character and in their values, and they are very unlikely to go back to the compulsive problem behavior. So what Paul Wong taught in meaning-centered recovery is that humans have two primary motivations. Number one, to survive. And number two, why am I surviving? What is the meaning of this? Why should I recover? Why should I stop this problematic behavior and why shouldn't I go back? What is my compelling reason for living, for existing? And what Wong found is that most relapse prevention strategies, most recovery plans fail because they do not account for the need for meaning and purpose. If you think about it, here's what the typical recovery plan looks like. I'm going to go to therapy with possibly a CSAP to look at family of origin issues. I'm going to go through a 12-step process, probably with a community and with a sponsor. I'm going to attend daily, if not weekly, meetings. I'm going to try to make fellowship calls to other brothers on a consistent basis. And I'm going to try to replace unhealthy activities with healthy activities from my outer circle. What's missing in this plan? What Wong says what's missing in this plan is the reason to do all these things. What's the purpose? I can mechanically follow a plan like this, but if it ignores identifying what is the purpose, what is the meaning, what are my compelling goals in life that are worth pursuing, then it often leads to relapse. When it comes to meaning-centered recovery, there are two types of meanings. There are little meanings, or what I call little m meanings in life, and there are big meanings, big M meanings in life. Well, what do we mean by little and big meanings? Little meanings is where you find meaning and purpose in the present moment and what you're doing. Whereas big M meanings are the larger existential questions like, why am I here and what is the meaning of life? And when it comes to meaning-centered recovery, both are important and you need to focus on both. So what would it look like to focus on little m meaning? It's the understanding that when I react to an event or a person that's going on right now, I'm not just reacting to the event or the person. I am reacting to the meaning that I have ascribed to this event or to what this person is doing. So meaning-centered recovery focuses on doing the next right thing according to my values and my purpose and my meaning in life and what I want most out of life a year from now, 5 years from now, that I live in accordance with those values. That's why that meaning intervention was so effective in the study. It's because it reminded the person of what matters the most to them during a time when we're typically very myopic and only focusing on the current moment. We also need big M meaning defined and understood for us as well if we're going to be involved in meaning-centered recovery. So when it comes to big M meaning, we've got to have some kind of long-term vision. What do I want my life to look like 5 years from now? And what is the best path to get there? And does my behavior right now, is that in alignment with what I want most? If we don't have a long-term vision, then any short-term goals really are meaningless. And now we're back to the original problem, and that is a life that doesn't have purpose or meaning. So meaning-centered recovery is forward-looking. It's not just looking at the past. And this draws heavily from the research and the teaching of Viktor Frankl. If you're not familiar with Viktor Frankl, he is the scientist that survived a Nazi concentration camp. And from his experience in those camps, he concluded that him and the peers around him who were most likely to survive those camps were those who were, quote, oriented towards the future, towards a meaning that they could fulfill in the future. And those who were only stuck in the present moment, and they're moving rocks from this spot and putting them in this spot. And then the Nazi soldiers would tell them, take the rocks that you put right here in this spot and put them back in the original spot. And there was apparently no purpose, no meaning, no value to the activity that they were doing. When the concentration camp survivor was stuck only focusing on the current moment, then life, quote, consequently lost all content and all meaning for them. Those that survived were those that were able to focus on a meaning that they were going to fulfill in the future. And that kept perspective as they were doing what felt like a meaningless present activity. This reminds me of a podcast interview I heard recently with a well-known coder, computer coder, that has a big following. And he had an interview on one of the top well-known, most followed podcasts in the world. And this was a 3-hour interview where he talked intimately about his life and his relationships and his faith. And he talked about his addictions. And he had several. He had addictions to alcohol. He had addictions to meth. He had addictions to cocaine, and he had addictions to porn. And he said one of the hardest ones for him to stop was his porn addiction. And the interviewer asked him, well, how did you stop? What finally worked for you? He said, I was finally able to stop. He was right around age 28 to 30, I believe. I was finally able to stop when I started thinking about what do I want most 5 years from now? And I realized what I wanted most, more than anything, is to marry a really wonderful person and to have a family and to enjoy that family and to enjoy that marriage for the rest of my life. And what I was doing right now was not going to lead towards that happiness that I had defined for myself. That's what I wanted more than anything. And so that was the motivation that helped me stop in that moment and avoid temptation every moment after that, because I kept reminding myself of what is my meaning, what is my purpose, what is my greatest compelling vision and goal for my life. Now, I enjoy geeking out on research like this, but I also enjoy overlaying it with scripture and what do I understand, not just scientifically, but also theologically. And what I believe, just based upon my own personal theology, it is my personal opinion that the greatest meaning and purpose in life is intimacy. And it's intimacy with God, our creator, with ourselves, and with others. And this is what we had originally in the garden with Adam and Eve, our initial original parents, and we lost it, and we longed to regain it. What Adam and Eve had in the beginning was a perfect, intimate relationship with themselves, with each other, and with their creator. And he created this environment where they could enjoy life in the garden. They had a purpose where they were taking care of the garden and cultivating the garden. And they had this relationship with each other that was intimate and vulnerable. They were, quote, naked, and there was no shame. They didn't hide from each other. They would enjoy walks with their creator in the cool of the evening every day. And they had an intimate relationship with him. And that's where humanity started. That's how life was meant to be. And we lost it. How did we lose it? Because we lost sight of meaning and purpose. And instead they got distracted by looking at a source of temptation. And when they gave into that temptation, they lost a lot of those benefits of intimacy. And for the first time in human existence, shame entered our reality. And the word shame literally means covering. And that's what they did. They hid from each other. They sewed fig leaves together. They hid behind these leaves. They hid from each other, and they hid from their creator. And when their creator asked them what happened, they blamed each other. And that's what happens with shame. When we can't handle the shame, we resort to blame. And that is the human experience, that we have been intimacy avoidant ever since then. We're intimacy avoidant by birth and by choice. That is the gravitational pull of the human heart. It is the human condition. It's not just a disorder, but we all hide. We all have fig leaves. We're just more sophisticated with it today. What the addict does is we replace intimacy with intensity. We love intensity. We will make a mountain out of a molehill. We can generate resentments like that. And the addict's life is filled with emotional intensity in particular. And we don't seem to care if the emotion is anger or love or hate or happiness or resentment or bitterness or sadness or depression. As long as the emotion is raised to a soap opera level, then we're okay with it. We like the drama. Yet when you look at all the time and effort and money that is spent in acting out, nothing is accomplished. Instead, what happens is we lose our physical health, we lose our mental health, we lose our emotional health, we lose our spiritual health, we often lose our relationships, sometimes we lose jobs, sometimes we lose friends, we lose respect for ourselves, and there's a whole host of things that we lose. The addiction has no meaning. It has no goal. It has no purpose. It has no value. Its only purpose is to perpetuate itself. So the addict, what we did was we substituted living with intimacy to living with intensity. We substituted living with purpose and meaning to living with no purpose and no meaning. And when the addict realizes that this intense lifestyle was actually a response to a lack of meaning and a lack of intimacy, that's when we can experience incredible transformation. Let me give you 3 practical tools, zero cost, that you can implement right now to practice meaning-centered recovery. Tool number one. This one is little m. This is finding meaning in the moment. You can ask yourself, what do I want a year from now? Or what do I want 5 years from now? And will the action that I'm taking right now, is this the most likely path to what I really want a year from now? What do I want for my relationship with my partner? And is my behavior that I'm engaging in right now, is this in alignment with that meaning, that purpose, that goal, that value that I have? A second tool is more of a big M meaning. And this is an exercise that was actually done by Viktor Frankl. And he called it the eulogy exercise. And this is where you sit down and you actually write your funeral. You write your own eulogy. Or if you don't want to be that fatalistic or depressing about it, just imagine that you live long enough that you celebrate your 95th birthday. And all your friends and family and extended family and grandkids and great grandkids have all showed up for your 95th birthday celebration. And they're going to take a moment to honor you. What would you hope they would say at that party? That's a big M. That is what would give your life meaning and purpose. That when you reach the last stages of it, this is what you want thought and said about you. A third tool that you can utilize is to identify, define, crystallize, what are my values? What are my priorities? What's most important to me? When it comes to values, I think everyone has two sets of values. I think everyone has actual values and aspirational values. And this is true of organizations, and this is true of individuals. You can go to an organizational website and you'll see their aspirational values. But when you actually go and work for that company, you may find that their actual values are not in alignment and there's a gap. This is what they aspire to be, but this is who they actually are. Well, what's true of organizations is also true of individuals. That I have two sets of core values, and you probably do too. Actual, what I'm living today, and aspirational, who I want to be, and what's most important to me. And I want to live in alignment where there is no gap between those. And on good days, there's no gap. On bad days, there's a gap. What I have as my aspirational values is my true north, my most important value that I aspire to live by is my relationship with God and the way he speaks to me through my conscience. Because the sad fact is, for most of my adolescent and adult life, I suppressed my conscience, I violated my conscience, I did not listen to my conscience, and I didn't have a healthy relationship with my conscience. And so now in recovery, that is my true north, my relationship with God, intimacy with him, and following and listening to what he says to me in my conscience and not violating that. And when I go against my conscience, there is a difference between my aspirational values and my actual values. And the one thing that I don't want to ever cross again is my conscience. That I want to maintain a close relationship with God, that is my true north. Now, second to that is an intimate relationship with my wife. Now, when I live according to my aspirational values, the most important human relationship on this world is my relationship with my wife. And it trumps and surpasses and takes priority over every other relationship and every other ambition and every other aspect of life. That she is the most important thing. That is my aspirational value. That underneath that would be my children, extended family, community, brotherhood, things like everything is a distant third to those two. Those are my aspirational core values. My actual core values that I wake up with every morning is number one, Roy, number two, Roy, and number three, Roy. I wake up in a default mode of selfishness, and life is all about me. And when I had sexual integrity issues, those were my actual core values. That's how I lived my life. And my conscience was nowhere to be found. I did not have a relationship with God in a meaningful way, nor did I listen to the conscience that he gave me. And so that is how I wake up every morning, is selfish. I am selfish by birth and I'm selfish by choice. That is the condition of fallen humanity. That is the human condition. And so I've got to recalibrate, reorient my life every morning to start that day around my aspirational core values by connecting with God and asking him to help me love and serve my wife well and to make her the most important human relationship, to forsake all others for the sake of an intimate relationship with her. Now, there are times when I need to be reminded, of these values. And sometimes when we lose sight of that, that's when we can get into trouble. So if there is temptation that comes our way, what is found in this research and what is found anecdotally in our own lives is that if we will remind ourselves, what is most important to me in my life? What do I want more than anything else? What do I want my life to look like a year from now, 5 years from now? And will giving in to this temptation, will eating this fruit, like Adam and Eve did, will this lead to the outcome that I want? Does this add meaning, value, or purpose to my life? Or does this contradict what I say my aspirational values are and what I want most? Am I going to undermine what I want most in life by engaging in this behavior? That can be true for addictive behavior, but can also be true for abusive behavior. So let's say my wife and I are having a conversation and it's intense and I'm starting to feel defensive and I'm wanting to go into a defensive mode. What's happening in that moment is a values issue. Instead of Jacqueline being my top priority and holding her in high esteem above everyone else, including myself, I am being tempted in that moment to put myself above her. And what is most important to me in that moment is defending Roy, as opposed to her safety, her well-being, her flourishing, and even our coupleship. That what I value most in that moment is to be right and to defend myself and prove that I'm right, rather than her feeling understood, accepted, loved. And what do I want most right now in this moment? And what do I want most a year from now? And am I living according to that? Is it more important that she feels cherished, loved, safe, valued, understood, and acknowledged? Or is it more important that I'm right and I let her know it? So this is where a meaning and values and purpose intervention can help, not just with temptation and addictive behavior, but the temptation to do harm and abusive behavior. Really, what we've talked about today is the most effective intervention when it comes to moments of temptation that decreases our desire to do the problem behavior and increases our feeling of agency that we can overcome this, is when there is some kind of reminder of our meaning, our purpose, and our values in life. That is more effective than mindfulness, and nothing against mindfulness. That's more effective than distracting and just trying to find something else to do. That's more effective than finding something to be in a sense of awe. And that's more effective than harnessing our own willpower. That's the power of tapping into our meaning, our purpose, and our values, and being reminded in those crucial moments of what is my life all about and what do I want more than anything. Thank you for joining us for this episode today, and we'll see you next time.